And this picture, the reason why I put it up here is I want to show you, this is what I learned in medical school. The anterior chamber, the lens, and the cornea block UV light. That's what every doctor in the United States is still taught to this very day. Okay? So when I went on this journey after reading The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, I found out that was bullshit too. Okay? And it turns out, if you look at the signals get through, 1% of UVB gets through, and 3% of UVA gets through. And you heard one of the other speakers mention something about collagen and piezoelectricity. And it's not important that you know that, but you know what is important? The vitreous of the eye is a special collagen. It's not found anywhere else in the body. You know what it does? Slows light down before it gets to the retina. I was like, that's kind of interesting, because what did I say to you before about the E equals MC squared? Anytime you slow light down, you create things with structure, with mass. You create matter, don't you? So I thought this was kind of interesting. And then I also want to teach you another thing that's really important about UV light. It's the only part of the visible spectrum that works in a nonlinear fashion. What does nonlinear mean? My members know what it means, but I want to make sure you guys know. A small stimulus leads to a massive amplification. In other words, it can have massive effects that you don't anticipate. Well, we're going to talk about some of those. Okay? The key thing, this is a picture from Ben's movie. You need to question everything. You're looking at a guy speaking to you right now who doesn't believe pretty much anything he learned in medical school can be taken with any truth. You need to examine everything. And this story about me constructing the leptin prescription and all these things I learned about the eye are the reason why I'm passionate about what I do. Now, the pupil is a perfect black box radiator. What does that mean? Because we're doing a little physics here. It means that light can go in and come back. How did I know immediately that UV light got through? I challenge anybody to go to Batteries and Bulbs, buy a UVA flashlight, LED, put it in anybody's retina. You know what you'll see? You'll see fluorescence come right back. You don't need anything else. So every time the ophthalmologist, like when I gave this talk 3 months ago and I proved to them they were full of shit, that's how I did it. I brought a UVA flashlight and shined it in all their eyes. I said, what did you see? Explain, based on what we learned in medical school. That shut them up pretty quick, okay? Because you don't need a lot of photons to see the effect. This is something that everybody in this room can do, reproducible. So when you go to the ophthalmologist, you can say, I don't believe what you're telling me. But here's the key. You guys have heard from all your food gurus that you've heard previously talk in all these other years about tryptophan, about tyrosine, about phenylalanine, and histidine. But you know what you don't know about aromatic amino acids? They all absorb UV light. Did you know that? Well, I didn't 12 years ago. But the key thing is the eye is loaded with these amino acids specifically. So that raised a question. Why is this? Well, I found out from physics that a benzene ring, which is in every single aromatic amino acid, is a photon trap. And they absorb all frequencies of UV light. So guess what that means? That 250 to 380 is absorbed by this. That's the reason why we don't see it, because it's designed to do something different. Okay? And here's the key. Every single protein in the body, and this is something that was missed earlier in one of the talks, I didn't want to say anything. Every protein in your body is hydrated, okay? Zinc cannot bind to a protein in the way you were told earlier today. And I'm going to show you the reason why, and I'm going to tell you exactly how it really works, okay? The other big thing to know is from Pollock's work. I would tell anybody, if you're going to read the first book, Pollock's one is a great one because it's a third grade reading book. Everybody will understand the basics of water. But for this talk, it's not good enough. So there's something that started. Pollock's book came out in 2014. There's two researchers named Gelduce and Perparta. In 2000, they found that the EZ forms something called the coherent domain. 13% of the exclusion zone in water, when sunlight hits water, makes something called the coherent domain, which makes 1 million electrons, free electrons, delocalized to run all the biochemical programs. Does anybody know how many biochemical programs run per second in a cell? It's 100,000. Guess what has the control of those enzymatic flux? If you ask any PhD or any nutritionist at all, The answer is they don't know the answer. But guess what? It turns out light frequencies can control all of them by a molecular resonance phenomenon. And that is how biochemistry works. Now, this one is for the McKissick lecture. Everything that she told you is in this slide. So if you want to learn how light works, here you go. This is a protein. UV light hits it. That is a light antenna. It's surrounded by water. Light is an electromagnetic wave that changes to an electromechanical wave. That's called sound. That sound is collected in water. Now, here's the interesting thing. Water is a magnetic dipole. What does that mean? Hydrogen and oxygens, positive and negative. That's the reason why it's tied to magnetism. The first time that we found out that magnetism truly controls sound, Ohio State University Acoustic Phonons 2014. You can look it up, okay? Some of us already knew this, and the reason why we knew it is here's the key. When the light hits here, it's absorbed in the water. That changes the hydrogen bonding networks. What is the physical change? The physical change is the density of the water. That is how this works. Fundamentally, quantum mechanically. Now, here's the interesting thing. Mitochondria makes the cytosolic water that surrounds all the things in the cytosol, including the nucleus and the mitochondria. Where is this connection? Well, for those of you who don't know, the Schumann resonance comes from the interaction of sunlight on the ionosphere of the Earth. That's why people call it the heartbeat of Earth. But it's an electrical tension that develops between the solar plasma and the atmosphere that generates the 7.83 hertz. Why do you need to know about it? What I tell you my day job was, I'm a neurosurgeon, right? The alpha wave in the human brain is 7.83 hertz, exactly the same. So guess what? The solar system entrains you to these solar systems as it comes to Earth. That's how it works, okay? Why is it important? It generates the alpha wave. So when you live in an environment today, you don't have as many alpha waves. Why? Because non-native EMF, what's the number one effect, which you'll learn about later, dehydrates your cells because it lowers your redox potential in your mitochondria. In other words, original slide, you can't make as much water from your own mitochondria. That's where the dehydration comes. And for the ladies in the room or the guys in the room who are not big science people, simple biohack at home, take a piece of steak that you have left over, throw it in the microwave, taste it. What does it taste like? Shoe leather. Why? What do microwaves do? They vibrate and rotate water really fast. It heats up and it dehydrates the meat. It's happening to you right now here in Vermont. It's happening to all of us because of these shitty lights that we have. Okay, getting back to the topic. The eye, the SCN is the big focus. In medicine, the big focus is on the camera. That's why all these old people go see the ophthalmologist, and what do they get? Cataract surgery, right? Anybody know what they put in for cataract surgery after it's done? An implantable lens. And guess what that lens blocks? UVA, UVB, 100%, and also, these days, 50% of blue light, in case you didn't know that. That's been a change since 2009. We'll go there later. That's a little different story. It's even worse. So getting back to this story, what people don't realize, 42% of sunlight that falls to Earth is infrared A light. It's balanced all the time by blue, okay? Especially when the sun rises. Now, this is a side picture of an eyeball. What you need to know, and this goes back to physics, in case you don't, blue light bends the most by gravitational lensing. It turns out this is important in the eye because when blue light comes through, it falls in front of the retina. That's the reason why when you use a computer screen or you use these horrible lights up here, you get visual obscuration. In other words, your vision gets worse. What does that cause? It causes elongation of your eyeball. When your eyeball gets longer, you get myopia. What happens when you get myopia? The next step is you get retinal detachments. What's the end result? Acute macular degeneration. Anybody know anybody who's got that? Yeah, lots of people. And guess what else? Guess what causes cataracts? Blue light toxicity. Why? The brain is trying to protect itself from this light that's coming in, so it makes the lens hazy, so this doesn't happen. But why is it important to a mitochondriac? Well, it turns out in about 2003, 2004, through 2009, we had some really cool researchers that found out there's another opsin in the eye. And that opsin works with the retinal ganglion cells, and that's called melanopsin. Melanopsin is the hormone that runs the central retinal pathways in the eye. And it turns out they're really important at nighttime, and they link to melatonin, but not in the way most people think. The fovea is where the rest of the visual light spectrum fall, and it falls right here. Why? That's acute vision. That's your camera focus. That's what the ophthalmologists all pay attention to. They don't pay attention to this. The only ophthalmologists that do, you're going to hear about later, are the Japanese guys, who are the guys that I talked to 3 months ago. They've been on this way quicker than our American counterparts. But here's the key. I'm going to make a very controversial statement now for many people in this room. The central retinal pathway energizes everything distal to it. So let me explain that to you. It basically turns on your pituitary gland, and it turns on everything distal in the human brain. And I'm going to show you how. This paper, I should say this gentleman, his name is Fritz Hollwich. He was an amazing cat. He was an ophthalmologist in Germany. He was born in the 1920s. He happened to live in a time where we didn't have intraocular lenses. And one of the things that he noticed is that when he saw people with cataracts, he would cut the cataract out so they could see. And for those of you who don't know, this is what happened to Vincent van Gogh. You know, when he painted haystacks, the reason why he painted them in all different colors is because when you take a cataract out and you don't put a lens in, you can see UV. In case you didn't know that. So that's the reason why haystacks has all the different shades, because he was able to see it in so many different colors as the light changed. Well, it turns out this doctor actually practiced medicine in a time that we could never recapitulate now. And that's why sometimes looking back is a good thing. And I started to look really far back. In fact, as a neurosurgeon, these guys, especially Cajal in 1891, he's the father of modern neuroanatomy. I started to find papers about this energetic pathway that has huge effects on growth and metabolism through the eye. You didn't hear me say gut. You didn't hear me say food, did you? Turns out that Hollwich did something rather remarkable. And he wrote about it in this book here from 1979. And I guarantee you nobody in this room's ever read it. If you think Weston A. Price's book is huge, you should read this sucker. Because it's unbelievable what he did. He basically took cataracts out of people and then noticed and watched them and saw that their growth and metabolism improved tremendously. They started to lose weight, they started to feel better, they started to sleep better. And he documented it all. And guess what? He didn't just do it in humans, he did it in all kinds of animals. And he documented the color changes that occurred on animals after he took the cataracts out. How their coats changed, their surfaces, how they started to act on the farm. Okay? That's how important this was. And he went even further. He checked their urine. And you know what he found? He found there was metabolites of hormones that occurred after he took the cataract out that weren't there before. So in other words, light was able to make chemicals in us that weren't there before. Doesn't that sound a lot like E equals MC squared? Like, how did light get turned into things with structure, things with mass, things that you heard Chris Masterjohn talked about earlier? How does this really happen? Do you really think that you need it all from diet and exercise? There's another way. There is another way. And when he did these studies, it was incredible. And I have to tell you, most of the ophthalmologists I talked to 3 months ago didn't know a damn thing about Fritz Hollwich. And he was an ophthalmologist and well published.